All right, so Amber, what is a public matter for this week?
Okay, so we're gonna go down memory lane of 2020.
Great year.
And we are going to discuss C-19, because we're not going to say the name of it, because I think
this is like saying Satan?
It is, because then the algorithms pick it up, and then fact checkers will be on, and we'll have those little captions at the bottom that says fact check or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, we're just going to go over the things that we did or were forced to do during COVID.
Forced? Can't imagine. It's America.
It is. Or the things that we gave up to do these things. But I did want to say, which I just remembered right now, is that Fed Now just went into effect July 1st. But we might not see anything for a while, which is basically the automated service that monitors what we spend our money on via the internet or via your online banking.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, so July we lose our right to use cash, and we also get Independence Day. Yay! And in some states or some towns, you're not allowed to have fireworks because they're not allowed.
Well, that's been going on for a while, though.
Right.
They were banned in certain states, like this one, which we won't say, but they were banned for a while.
I don't understand why they were banned. I come from a state that was not.
Because it's for your own good. Because they're dangerous.
Right. So, the Independence Day is built on freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And people use guns and cannons and.
Are you talking about a hypocrisy or an oxymoron?
I am. And then I find it to be funny that you have neighbors that scream that you're not allowed.
You have neighbors.
I have neighbors that scream you're not allowed to. There's no fireworks or there's a noise ordinance or whatever.
Yeah, and it's Independence Day. And how do you celebrate your independence?
Apparently screaming out the window.
Screaming out the window, calling the police because you celebrate with a bang.
Yes.
Or several bangs.
There's quite a few bangs.
Oh, isn't this great?
It is. So, before we get down memory lane, I do want to discuss Fauci's new job as a professor in
Tony?
Yes. He is going to be working at Georgetown's Infectious Disease Division for the university's medical school.
Why doesn't he just go away?
Well, he should go to jail. But, that's not going to happen.
He's 80 years old. He was the highest paid federal employee in the country.
He was there for 50 years.
Why doesn't he just go away? And he won't even tell us how much money he made off from his investments in certain vaccine companies. Which
he's been doing since the 80s for HIV and...
Oh, yes. This is a good story. You should look up Fauci and HIV.
Oh, that's a whole other debacle that he...
That's a shit show.
That is a shit show. That he actually held on to information so that it could spread a little further so that he could use the vaccines or test the ones that he had money into. He's not one that's actually done much research on it. He's always the one that goes in and asks for the papers of people who have done the research on it.
Yeah, and then he gets a profit because he's backing up the companies that produce this stuff.
Right.
Like the vaccines, yeah.
So, all right, so we have COVID memory lane. C-19 memory lane. Hopefully, I'm going to try not to say it again. I might have to actually cut it out, or maybe I'll have to do a blooper or something. Because I'm going to try not to say it.
I dare you people not to say it. Just try it sometime.
The year
C-19.
of 2020. All right, so let's see. We had to close churches.
Isn't that an interesting one? You have a First Amendment right to associate, by the way. But not under C-19.
Right. That was an emergency, so they took away all your rights, or at least that right.
I don't think emergencies are in the Constitution.
They're not, actually. And then we had to stand 6 feet away from each other to get into the store. That you could then walk around and do whatever. But then some stores had it so that you actually you'd have to walk in one direction
Right.
and then go down the other direction.
Even though you could pass people that were stopped in the aisle.
Right.
But it made a difference in the direction you were going. But if you went around people...
Right. Or if you stopped and picked up an item and they were walking, then you would be closer than 6 feet. But what
Right.
if they had an item that you wanted to get, so you had to wait? So did you have to, were you supposed to?
I never wore a mask. I never followed one of those rules. And I got kicked out of every store except for 2 that I go to.
Well, I got spoken to a few times.
I did not comply. I got to tell you, though, that the stores that were complying that I went to, there's a major chain that sells, I don't think I can mention them, but it begins with an L. They sell a lot of products that people remodel homes with and so forth. Anyway, I found out that I was like Moses. You know how he could part the seas? Like the aisles would clear right out. I had power. I had some sort of power because there was all these people who bought into this stuff. And
well, there was a time period also, I don't know if you remember, that they actually said masks were optional.
Yeah, I remember this.
So then...
Not necessary even.
Right, but then, it went back to the mask mandate. So we went from, you had to wear a mask, you had to stay 6 feet from each other. There's only a limited amount of people to go into the store.
Right.
Now, mind you, what I found to be, interesting is that there was a limited amount of people into the store, right? But how was it that you knew whether those limited amount of people were not going to all go to the garden section or to the dairy section, and then they would just congregate? How could you regulate that?
Yeah, they picked and chose what stayed open. The churches couldn't be open in any case. Again, there's a war on Christianity, and if you can't see that going on now and where it began, this was clearer than... anyway, there was... churches were closed, and major retail stores were primarily open.
Yeah, so small business had to shut down.
Many did, yeah.
Restaurants weren't allowed to open for that period of time.
Remember that. Yes.
And then they were allowed to open if they had outside seating.
Do you remember? So remember, I want you people to recall the stores or the restaurants and so forth that were forced to close during COVID and lost their shirts, and in many cases closed.
Yeah.
And people lost their wealth. They lost everything. They lost their hopes. Your government did this to you because of an emergency that we know now. Look in hindsight, and don't look through rose-colored glasses like they had to do something. They didn't have to do a damn thing. It's your free choice. Anyway, I'm digressing. Let's go down memory lane some more.
So you had... this was a good one. You had to wear a mask to get into... So now all of a sudden lockdowns are being laxed, okay?
Right.
So you had to wear a mask to get to your table, but once you got to your table, you were allowed to take the mask down.
There was no COVID at the table?
No COVID at the table. And the server...
C-19, I mean.
Right, damn it. Okay.
Try it.
Okay, so there was no C-19 at your table, and so your server had to wear a mask, which you could barely understand the person because they're muffled. And school children had to stand outside when they finally were allowed to go back to school, 6 feet apart from each other with masks on outside. Now, here's the thing I have a little bit of a problem with, is that when you have outside, there's the fresh air, there's the sun, there's actual things that make a difference to your immune system that you need from outside. Like, for instance, they closed down the beaches. Now, what is one of the best things that you can do is go outside, walk barefoot on the beach, which gives you different antibodies, gets you different germs and bacteria that help your body fight these immunities.
You're in the fresh air.
Right. And then the sea automatically, purifies the whole situation. And you weren't allowed to go to parks. You weren't allowed to go to the beach. You weren't allowed to...
Couldn't go out in the open air.
Right, which makes you wonder, was there really something else going on?
Of course there was. This was in my opinion, this is what it came down to. This was a trial run, if you will, on certain aspects of our freedoms that they were going to take away.
Right.
And they were going to do this trial test on something. We can get into C-19 a little bit, about certain things, but keep going on. Your memory seems to be very good on this.
All right, so we had, and the other thing that was funny about C-19 is that apparently with C-19's vaccine, first, because Trump came out and speedied the process of vaccines, which I found to be very odd that you would want to bypass all the trials and all the different experiments that are supposed to happen before you get a vaccine. I found that to be fishy, whether you like Trump or not. I just don't think that you should be skipping these steps of a vaccine. But remember, the media had no interest in Trump's vaccine. But then the same exact vaccine that's released by Biden is everybody should take it, screw your freedoms. The person that should get help is the vax person, not the anti-vax person. Now that Biden has the administration, it's good, it's golden. We should all take it. Now,
well, to be fair, Trump is still saying that it was a good thing and all that. Remember, it was Trump that brought you this vaccine.
Right.
So remember that when you get to the voting booth. My mind's made up because he said something like, he had me at, I'm your retribution. So maybe he learned a lesson.
I think the thing is, it goes deeper than just him releasing the vaccine. He also, not that I know of, I'm not saying I know this for certain, but I'm assuming he probably gets kickbacks from pharmaceutical companies. Not necessarily he gets, the doctor, you shake your hand and they get the $100 or whatever the deal is. That they were getting, if you had a patient that had COVID, if you had a patient that had
hard not to say
the virus, they would pay you, I think it was
hospitals were getting about $39,000 a COVID patient.
Right, but there's two different amounts. You get $33,000 if they died from C-19.
Right.
And I think it was $2,000 if they had C-19. So there were different levels of how much you could get back.
There was also kickbacks to the doctors and the hospitals for using remdesivir, runaway in fear, which had a dismal rate of killing people. If you took that, you were probably bound to get very sick or die.
Right. And then, the ivermectin. Ivermectin
and what was the other one?
I don't remember.
Yeah, there was another one, and I can't think of it off the top of my head. Ivermectin has a wonderful rate of, it's good for cancer, too.
Well, ivermectin is something that they use in horse wormers.
Right. You remember they were saying it was a horse medication?
Which it is.
But it's been used for humans for eons, and it's very effective.
Well, here's the thing. The funny thing is that the reason ivermectin is used is it's a dewormer for horses. Mm-hmm. So it gets into their system. It doesn't make them sick, but it kills the worms. Now, that's similar to what it does in humans. Obviously, you're not going to have the same dosage. But for instance, we've used horse things for many years. For instance, mane and tail hair and shampoo, not that they're the same thing, but people did like the mane and tail shampoo that is used on horses. It was originally used for mane and tails of horses, and now people use it. Now, there are other things that people use in horses that people also use in medical different things. I don't have a list of them, I can't remember, but I do know that there's quite a few. Now, mind you, at a different dosage, it changes how much you can have or how much it's effective or whatever, but the idea is still the same.
Right, but people were using it, and they were having to sneak it into hospitals, and hospitals
they weren't using it. Well, here's the thing: if you get more money by someone dying than them getting well, what are you going to do? It's the same thing as whenever you have what is it called? The donor, on your driver's license, it says that you are a
organ donor?
Organ donor. I've seen many, many articles and many, many different things that state that the person died the moment they took that organ out.
Mhm.
So it was a big, huge thing, I think, in the 90s that you didn't put organ donor on your driver's license because if you were a good match for somebody else, they were just going to be like, oh, this kid died in a car accident. Sucks for him.
Yeah, they're taking
Or
it.
they're taking that. So it's kind of similar to that view, is that you're going to take someone else's life for
Right.
the money. So I think that COVID was really just a runway for the next thing that's going to come out.
Do you remember that people were the United States Postal Service was involved in because people were trying to import ivermectin into this country so they could treat themselves if they thought they were sick. And the Postal Service got involved where they were actually intercepting these orders that were coming in from, I don't know, out overseas or from Canada, wherever they were getting it from. The Postal Service would actually get involved with ferreting through your post to remove that. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine this? In fact, when a close relative of mine, I won't say who ended up dying, but not of COVID, excuse me, C-19, was forbidden from being, the hospital would not, they had, because I asked, because I was called, and they were not allowed to administer ivermectin. They had to give remdesivir, runaway in fear. And that person ended up dying 4 days after they were given remdesivir. So there's something to think about. But there was, you remember the other things too? For instance, get back to the masking. So you had to stand 6 feet apart.
Yeah.
With a mask on, let's say in a airport, if you were unfortunate enough to have travel, and you could sit in the few restaurants that might be open in the terminals. But then you get on a plane, because many flights were canceled because of this, because fewer people were flying. That meant that even though the people that were flying, they would cram them into planes. And I remember flying to, where was I going? I think I was going to, I forget where I was at Montana, someplace I was going to. So you stand 6 feet apart, you get on this plane, and you are shoulder to shoulder with people now.
Yeah.
And then think of how asinine it is. And people bought this left, right, and center. This is the way it was, and if you were unfortunate enough to be caught with your mask off or fell asleep with your mask off, which I had seen from a...
oh, actually, I have a story about that. So
they would come by and give you warnings about this, or people... And then there's the other thing. Let me, while I'm on this train of thought, we get back to the stores that were open and closed. The stores that were open, towns, cities, set up these little hotline, these rat lines, that if you saw a store that wasn't enforcing the mask policy, you got the rat on the store, and the store would end up getting investigated and get fined. Yep. And I know of a store, a small store, that only because it was their livelihood, got ratted on twice, paid a heavy fine both times, and was threatened with being forced to close. Did they actually enforce the mask policy because of the rat line? Rat lines. This is what we were doing in this country, ratting on people for free choice.
Right.
Remember that.
Oh, so here's my story. So this was actually a whole year after COVID. We were headed down to Florida and...
C-19.
Damn it. Okay, C-19. Okay, so we were headed down to Florida on a plane, and one of my sons had taken their mask down, or it had fallen down, I don't remember, and he was sleeping on the plane.
Dear God, no.
There was, and we actually were split up because they changed our flight because we had issues on the flight, and whatever, same thing. There wasn't enough pilots, and they overbooked, so whatever. We got thrown onto this other plane, and I was sitting behind them, or one of my boys, and this guy was sitting next to him, and the stewardess asked, "Can you tell him to put his mask on?" And the guy goes, "He's asleep." And she goes, "Well, can you wake him up to tell him to put his mask on?" And the guy goes, "He's asleep." You know, and as this is going on, I think it rustles and he wakes up. And she's like...
Oh, yeah.
You know, and it's like, what the hell? I mean, we have to. They give you drinks.
They give you drinks. They give you
snacks,
food, which you can take your mask down for.
Right.
Like
You get to take it down. You get to sip. So at that point, COVID doesn't get you. But it's so bad that we don't have herd immunity. That's the other thing. There was no such thing as herd immunity. This was the one virus that we couldn't have herd immunity. We had to take the jab. We could not take and just have herd immunity. And how is it now, looking back, that there are more cases of people who got the jab having issues or having COVID more times than the people who did not get the jab?
Yeah, for instance, I never got the jab. My employer required it. I applied for a reasonable accommodation, which kind of went by the wayside because of things that took place. But I was threatened with my job. And that's a whole side story. But yeah, I was threatened with my job for that. I had to get the jab, had to get the jab. And I didn't. And I never got sick. I didn't even get so much as the flu or the cold or anything. All I took was elderberry. That's all I took. And I take it every year anyway. It's nothing different for me. Elderberry every year and some vitamin C. And I was fine. Now, like, you know of people.
Yeah.
A close relative, actually.
Yeah.
That gotten several boosters, 2 boosters, 3 boosters, and had it, 5 times?
I think so, yeah.
And we won't even get into the testing, which is a hokey thing anyway.
Oh my God, don't get me started on that whole
thing. You know, how they amplify about 35 times to, and then you've got the
I love how, the thing is, the test cracks me up, though, because you go in one, and instead of just pulling it out and using that one, they take it from one and stick it right up the other. So if you didn't have anything on this one, which your nose is a defense for you to get different bacteria or different things, your nose is a defense. So say, for instance, something was in this one. It's now in this one because you're shoved up the thing. How sterile is that? That we're using the same swab to shove up both noses or nostrils. I mean, that can't be sterile.
In my job, I had to get a C-19 test, the portable test administered by a health professional. And before they administered this, there was a group of us because we were all going someplace. So in order to go someplace, we had to prove that we were negative. Stupid.
Yeah.
And this guy was a doctor, and I watched him in this room. He was in like a conference room that there was a glass door in there. He's in there by himself. He's in there I watched him pick his nose, rub his nose, scratch his face, do all these gestures. I was watching in disbelief. And then the guy gets up, and he coughed a couple of times, and this was in the wintertime, January, and he came out and he wanted to administer these, and I said no. I said no. You're not going to, and why not? And anyway, it got into an altercation there, but I'm like, this is ridiculous. This is absolutely absurd.
Wait, I now just remembered that people were also wearing gloves. So they had masks and gloves on because that's what they suggested to you. Now, here's another fancy thing, is that if you were to wear gloves and pick up an item and put it into your cart, you would need to take those gloves off and put on another pair of gloves to pick up another item and put it in your cart. I mean, isn't that realistically how it works? You can't touch, that's contamination. You've now picked up one item to pick up another item, and so whatever that has.
Oh, absolutely. It's foolishness.
This is craziness that we don't see this.
It's insanity.
And then, wait 1 second, because we only have a few more minutes, but there were double masks.
Oh, the people with double masks, yes.
So we had to not only put on the N95, but then you also put on a cloth one so that you can double get the carbon monoxide poisoning that you get from breathing in your own shenanigans. But that's a whole different topic of whatever. Yeah. So you wore double masks. So people were willing to not just do it once and it didn't work, but do it twice. Now there's people that still go driving around with their mask on.
Those people
in their car.
Those people are helpless, they're hopeless, and they identify themselves That's all I can say about it, because I think in every state, I haven't been to a lot of states recently, thank God, except for the places in the Northwest that I really want to go to. But yeah, these people are just exposing themselves for what they are, just absolute foolish idiots. There's a video that I would like to encourage some of the viewers to see. And this is a good one. I would go to, I believe it's still on YouTube. And it's, there's a guy by the name of Stephen Petty, Stephen, S-T-E-P-H-E-N, Stephen Petty, on the effectiveness of masks. He's testifying before the New Hampshire legislature on the effectiveness of masks. This guy, and do some background on it. Just don't take this video for face value. Look into this guy's background and so forth, and look into everything he says about this. If you're still wearing a mask, or you have some doubts about it, or you just want some ammunition for the things that you knew inherently were foolish. But it's a great video, and it's on YouTube. The guy's name, again, is Stephen Petty. He's a industrial hygiene engineer, and it's a wonderful video, and it'll bring back some memories, too. Because this stuff is not gone. They will bring this back around, because they have got their metrics now of how many people obeyed with this stuff. They have metrics. And when we say they, the same people who locked us down before would lock us down again. This is why they don't want to get Donald Trump into office, because he won't do it.
Oh, and that's the other thing. Wait.
Go ahead.
Before we end off, we do have to discuss the fact that to get into your job, you had to get vaccinated. Military had to get vaccinated. The jab. And you had to get the jab to get on planes. There was supposed to be a vaccine passport. You even got a little piece of paper.
Not in this country, but some countries did have the vaccine passport.
Right. We didn't make it that far. But
they wanted to.
But here's the funny thing is that how is it that the immigrants, illegal, got to come in droves
without being tested?
They weren't tested. They didn't get vaccinated.
Yeah.
I mean, how are we not seeing this as a country to be like, wow, this is beyond
That's a good one.
crazy that these people are allowed to just walk through in, a wall of people.
During the height of C-19, they could come through in droves and not be tested and for anything.
No, nothing. And they were able to get funding, housing, all of it. And then, if they got shipped to different places, some people got kind of upset. But anyways, that's a whole other topic of immigration. So at this point, I think we're pretty good to end off on our C-19 memory lane. And,
don't ever forget, because there's a lot of things we forgot to bring to you.
Oh yeah, there's probably plenty more that we didn't.
We're just doing this off topic. This is really kind of an ad hoc show. It's kind of a filler, but we thought it'd be fun to go down memory lane.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm assuming there's more things that we are missing about the whole jab, about the whole what you were allowed to do and what places weren't allowed to do. Luckily, we don't have a lot of people in our state, so it's not it wasn't as regulated as some. I mean, New York was locked into apartments.
Do you remember this one? This is a memory lane, too. When this first happened, they were locking people down. They were talking about the extremeness of COVID, C-19, and then Trump released the mercy to New York City and so forth. And remember what they did with the old people? They locked them down, which made it worse, because then they just kept these old people in there.
Yeah.
You had a 99.8% chance of surviving anyway, but then you have the vaccine, which affected your immune system. Anyway, it was designed to kill old people, I think. But people were going, when this first happened, they were talking about these numbers on TV. This was like the Vietnam War thing. How many people were killed in, Southeast Asia this week, There's how many people were, in the hospitals, the hospital this, hospital that.
Yeah.
And people were going around to these various hospitals. I remember this guy going around to hospitals in New York City, for instance, and they had all this stuff set, and he walks in, and he gets confronted. He's like, where are all the sick people? And this happened across the country where people were walking in trying to verify what was going on in the news. And they could not verify because there was no sick people in the emergency rooms. Emergency rooms were empty. There was nobody there. But the news media, it was like this big theater going on, this giant hoax. You could see right through it.
Well, it's similar to
Do you remember those videos? People are going to the hospitals and saying,
yeah.
"There's nobody here."
Well, I remember those videos. I mean, it's similar.
Don't forget
to,
those. Those are good to go back and watch.
The indictment for Trump's papers and all he has, and they have pictures that they are putting as in evidence where there's boxes on boxes on boxes. If you actually read the indictment, they actually only say there's 102 papers that were 102 that were classified information that he took. But yet, on the media, they show boxes and boxes and rooms filled with boxes. Okay, I'm sorry, but
because it fits a narrative. It's just boxes, so like stock footage, just show boxes to make it look like something.
It's like 102. Like we'll say that like a ream of paper is usually 500.
Yeah.
So 102. It's not that many pieces. There's no way the man has that many boxes of. I mean, the thing is, it's like we just get. It's the same thing with COVID. I mean, C-19, with indictments, with before we go, I'm just going to end off on this final note. I only read the headline. I wasn't able to read the article yet, but apparently there has been cocaine found in the White House in the West Wing.
That is just too convenient. It was, I made a couple of comments on a platform about that because you just don't know what to believe. Did some do-gooder actually find something and turn it in? Because it seems to me like they could cover their tracks easy on this. Is this just another distraction, or are they going to try to sell? Are they going to try to sell Hunter down the road, as a sacrificial lamb to save his old man, or is this thing going to be the decline so they can bring in Gavin Newsom? What is the truth here? Because this does not ring true. There's just something about this that doesn't ring true. They found cocaine.
And now it's like a big thing. It's all over media. It's going crazy.
This is why I don't own a television, folks. Because this will get you thinking and talking about something. It's like, don't watch the left hand because the right hand's doing something else. You just never know.
No.
You just never know. And this is what's creepy about this stuff. So just keep your eyes open. If it doesn't sound right, it probably isn't, and do your own research. And there's a couple of platforms out there I don't think we can mention, but you know of them. They're three letters. You should go there because there is thousands and thousands of like-minded people who put out information. They scour the internet. They scour all kinds of things. So it's food for thought. It's information to research. So I encourage you to go to these places, because you can't trust your major media, just like you couldn't during C-19.
There, we said it. All right, so we're going to end off, and we'll be back next week.
We will, and don't forget, we want to hear some comments because we want to bring you things that you find interesting and we want to improve. Hit the like thing or wherever that is on there and give us some comments. We'd appreciate it. Thank you, and see you next time.